Hello again, welcome to OCD, Obsessive Consumer Disorder. A series that captures the myriad lives of partners, promoters, and professionals from the media, entertainment, marketing, and creative spaces. We are here to find out what makes our heart stick and why we continue to pursue what we still think is a lucrative career. Today I have on the show Vivek Reddy, Director Creative at Pad Integrated Communications. Vivek, it's a pleasure having you on this show. This has been long overdue, and thanks for making it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so we never had a platform to professionally have a conversation with each other,
Right.
and sort of do this cross interview kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a real pleasure. I'm looking forward
Thank
to
you.
this
Thanks
conversation.
for having me.
Vic, I just want to take a few paces back about your life, and so now today you're a promoter at a high profile, sort of a busy, let's say, communication company, something that's evolved from mainstream advertising into something slightly more comprehensive. But I want to know Vivek a little more as a child, and because even though we grew up as brothers, there are parts of your life which I'm not privy to. For example, being born and raised in Hyderabad, how did you ever sort of realize that you want to get into writing and then eventually get into communication and advertising? So
Coming to childhood, I think I was generally a very sensitive person. I still am. And I took up a lot on what my father used to say about the little things that we would observe in life, whether it was at home, whether it's outside. And I just think I was naturally creative. I would just like entertaining people, even when I used to go out with my friends or when I made new friends. It is all about entertaining people. I mean, I love doing that. So, honestly, writing, I had never thought of writing. I never used to write. I hardly used to read books, but I liked the idea of doing something creative. Dad was doing it for a long time, and we would see him, and there was some form of energy that we would draw from him. But largely, I feel it happened by chance. So I was doing my engineering, like a lot of Telugu boys who don't know why they're doing engineering. I ended up doing engineering. I played professional tennis for a long time, and what tennis did for me is it got me exposed to so many things. I used to travel a lot. A lot of that exposure today I use when I write.
you carry it in your
I carry it with
work.
me. Yeah, I carry it with me. I try to bring it into my work. A lot of the exposure also helped me understand how to be independent, how to be with a team, how to. So tennis is a very interesting game. Look at it, like singles. Singles is all about yourself. You have to pick yourself up. It's not like football. It's not like cricket.
It's not a team sport.
It's not a team sport, right? So it's all about yourself. So tennis taught me to be, although physically it was quite grinding, but mentally it taught me to be really strong. And I think the same flavor is what we try to bring back when we come to work, right? Why can't something be done? How can it be done differently, right? So tennis got me that edge when it came to the way I would approach anything. So the best part was I didn't plan on getting into advertising. It just happened by chance. I was working in an IT company called Accenture in Hyderabad. I got placed from college, and even in Accenture, I hardly remember working per se. I would mostly be doing a lot of extracurricular activities. I was very actively involved in the Great Place to Work forum, and every weekend I would either be playing cricket or I would be playing tennis. So all my relationship building, all my connect, all my network in Accenture happened through sport, through extracurriculars, through theater, through I even did a little modeling myself. So I found that very interesting. So when I left Accenture and I was looking to do something creative, my dad just said, "I think you should try Bombay." Right. So and then that's when I ended up in Bombay, and the
It's
moment.
very interesting how all your nuances around how you got into it are basically exposures to multiple things.
Yeah.
And understanding that there's a streak of creativity in all of these multiple things that you dabbled with.
Yeah.
And that led you to look inward and say, listen, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
So it seems like there's been a pattern around, or the world has worked for you to be in this space.
So I did not even plan on it. There was no pattern to it, honestly. It's just random. But the good part is, I think I followed my heart eventually. So a lot of what I was doing, what I'm doing right now is complete credit to everything that I did in my life, and I'm so glad I did so many things. And I'm so glad that I'm not at all stressed. And I think a lot of kids get stressed about not able to discover what they want to be, who they want to be, because of lack of exposure. I think children should not stress themselves about what they want to become. They should get exposed to a lot of things, and then organically that decision has to happen. It should not be something that they should be compelled into,
or it should be planned right from
right. I
when
mean,
they're-
it
when they're
depends.
young
It
adults.
varies. Some kids are lucky; they know what they want to be. They're passionate about it. They're very clear. Most kids are not, and I'm saying there's nothing to stress about it. It's actually a joy to experience multiple things.
And when else do you experiment?
Absolutely. I know so many people, even at the age of 50 or 55, who've just realized that what they were doing all their life was not it, and then start doing something completely new, and they completely love what they do and they excel at it.
So unless you had all of these experiences, you wouldn't have landed here.
Absolutely not.
All of your experiences have
Absolutely
led you
not.
to coming here.
Yeah.
So we believe today you're an avid footballer.
Yeah.
And what draws you to the game, and why are you so passionate about it?
So back in school, I played every sport possible. Football was one sport that is very close to my heart, because where we studied, it was quite a competitive game. Although the infrastructure was okay, it was not bad, nor was it great.
At least you had the space.
At least we had a ground to play, and so football was something that I really used to like, because I think tennis was always a very singles game.
Yeah.
Football was the only team game I used to really play back in school. So I think it just took off from there, and I like the idea of playing together as a team, winning together as a team, which I could hardly experience in tennis.
Right.
So maybe that's how it took off. And then after that, I just kept playing on and off. Now I try to get 2 games a week. There's a huge turf culture now in Hyderabad, so I try to get a couple of games a week.
So there's lots of teams that are out there, and you get to play with.
You get to play with multiple people, and
teams.
again, football has helped me connect with so many people. Very interesting people, different fields, different ages, and it's very nice. And you just suddenly get together and play a game, and you don't know who the other guy is, but you become good friends over a period of time.
Vivek, the show talks a lot about the guys who make the work that consumers sort of see, right? And also their take on the market, on what the consumer is about today,
right,
etc. So we want to understand your journey from when you started out as a junior writer, the people you worked with, the brands you worked on, and what are those influences you've carried, across your career so far.
So my journey started in Bombay. Interestingly, I walked into Leo Burnett, and I kind of showed them my resume, and they said, "You have an engineering background, you don't belong here." Or they didn't exactly say that, but they said that this might not be. I mean, they were not sure what I was looking for. But luckily, I knew someone there, and thanks to Mr. KV Sridhar, I could get a start into my career. Mr. KV Sridhar, for a lot of people who don't know, he's also popularly known as Pops in the Indian advertising circle. He was kind enough to kind of bring me in and give me an opportunity to intern. So I started as an intern in Leo Burnett as a junior writer. Interestingly, my first stint was with brands like Johnny Walker and Tata Capital and McDonald's and even Tata Salt. So the portfolio already was quite diverse.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I had no expectation whatsoever.
And you're talking to multiple forms of consumers, like each of them has a very different consumer.
Yeah. The most trickiest part for me was to write for a brand called Tata Capital. I was pretty bad at my own finances. So imagine having to write for a financial advisory brand. You really have to understand the product portfolio. You have to understand every bit of it, right? So it was always tricky to write for that brand, because sometimes you naturally love writing for a brand. Like the moment I say McDonald's, I'm sure I know a lot of people will be excited to want to work for a McDonald's in whatever.
But there is a box. There is a rigor to it. There is some set of rules to it, which actually constricts your sort of freedom of idea.
It does. So that's exactly, you're bang on. Like that's where I realized that the more restricted you are, the more creative you can get if you believe in it.
The sharper you get.
The sharper you get. So after a lot of writing brochures and pamphlets for Tata Capital, I finally got a break where I could work on a film, on a TVC script. It is a dream, I think, for any young writer to work on a TVC script. Right. So that's where I worked on it with my bosses, Mr. Amod Dani and Mr. Aki Kamath. Both of them have been phenomenal in my journey of learning, and they've been more like friends than bosses, and it was fantastic to learn from them. The best part was they were one of the youngest creative directors in Bombay at that point, and I was so fortunate to work with them. So they taught me a lot about put yourself in the shoes of them. That's all you need to do. Because advertising or communication is
It's
nothing.
not about the people sitting behind the desk writing about what they feel the product is.
Absolutely.
It's more about how the product or service fits in the life of the consumer and
Absolutely.
what it should mean to them.
And what it should mean to them, right? And they said that is why they got me into this whole habit of observing life. In our business, in advertising, if you want to transform or alter perception, you first need to
understand
someone has to connect with you.
Yeah.
And if you're selling a product or a service, you need to understand what that consumer is
and what his
right?
status quo with that product or service is.
Yeah, literally, like from the time he wakes up in the morning to the time he goes to sleep, what does that particular consumer do in his life? So what happened to me during that phase, and it was like my training phase, one of the most important phases of my life when it came to this space, was a lot of thinking in terms of who is my consumer. So the more you think of your consumer, the more you try to kind of dissect your consumer, the more you understand if this is going to work for him or her.
Sure.
Right? So that was a very interesting phase.
Vivek, it's been great journey on your own as a lone wolf, writing, figuring out your passion for this space, etc. Doing some great work with your bosses. But now you've moved on. Now you've moved on into a space where you lead a large team, which is delivering creatively. There's a lot of nuances with leading a large team of creative people and getting them to meet business briefs, etc. And just making common sense of why are we doing what we're doing. So, how's that journey been? Maybe you should. Looks like we have a special guest on the show today. Okay. This is Zoya. Hi, Zoya. Come here. Come on top. This is Zoya. I think she helps keep Vivek a little sane.
Yeah.
Once she goes back from work. Okay.
Good. Yeah. So Zoya is a very creative dog.
So she's an inspiration to your creativity.
Yeah. She's very, very intuitive, very smart, and very talkative in her own way.
Sometimes you wish you were like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love dogs. I've always been fond of dogs from when I'm a kid. Zoya's been probably one of the most interesting dogs I've ever had because, like I said, she thinks we're all humans as far as she's concerned, right? And she's one amongst us. She thinks she's one amongst us, right? Yeah. So Zoya's been pretty interesting for me in my life.
So you're talking about leading a large team.
So going back to what you were saying, yeah. So I think what was interesting for me was, and actually very challenging, was I'm a guy who's very sensitive, like I said. Definitely not a guy who can, be calm given a situation where there's a lot of people to be managed, a lot of things to be done. It is a completely different ballgame from what I did back in Bombay, where I was mostly working with a team of 2 to 3 people, but here talking about a team of easily around 40 to 50 people only in creative. It was not easy to kind of structure what they have to be delivering, right? It was never easy, and also it was a lot of self-realization for me in terms of understanding that it was so important to have inspire people in the creative space, right? So it's completely the right brain. The brief comes in from the client or from servicing, and when the creative people take it on, they get very excited to kind of do a lot of creative things. But sometimes you need to funnel that creative energy into making it more focused to the brief.
So from the source of the idea to who's going to be doing what part of the
whole piece, and then how do you approach it? So the biggest challenge for creative people and for myself too is when you get a brief, how do you approach it? And there are so many things that are very uncertain at times. There's so many things that you cannot control, right? And it's very difficult to kind of judge people in terms of the idea. You might have a fantastic idea, it might be so creative, but somehow it might not work for that product, right? So we know a lot of brands where and you would also kind of agree with me where the idea would have been so good. You remember the ad, but you won't remember the product, right? So it's a very tricky space, right? So that's when I started realizing that just being creative is not enough. It's nice to excite people with great creative work. In today's world, given so much consumption of content, to even get someone's attention is a big deal, right? So that is not easy, right? But then that said, the next step is, are we saying the right thing to the right people? For that, again, it boils down to who is our consumer, So, and the variety of brands that I've been working with at PAD, it's been a phenomenal learning. And a lot of categories I myself have not dealt with. So how do you, when you yourself haven't done something yourself in the past, not worked on a category, how can you give direction to someone in your team?
Yeah.
Right. So
that's a very tricky.
It's a very tricky space, and then you don't even know if you're giving them the right direction or not at times. So you really have to introspect and think of what is the one single thing that particular product or service should convey to the consumer that's been defined, right? And the good part is, PAD, I think, was one of the few agencies which has a planning or a strategy wing, and that team has been quite instrumental in making sure that the creative briefs are getting more and more structured. More and more, when I say structured, I mean more and more focused towards the audience that you want to target, right? So it's not just age, gender, where they come from. It is also a lot about psychography, about the behavior, about how they behave, which helps a creative person a lot when they start thinking of an idea. Yeah. Right. So I can say something really quirky, but will work for that consumer who's going to consume that product in that category.
So what are the different roles that people in your team play to meet your end, which is to make an interesting piece of communication?
So we have creative supervisors, we have creative controllers, and then followed by, it goes down from there. You have senior art, senior copy, and then you go down to graphic designers and copy and junior copy. So the way we've structured the teams are a very interesting way that we've done this time around. When I used to work in Bombay, it was always creative on one side of the floor, servicing on one side of the floor. While that is how the culture has been over a period of time, I believe anyone can generate an idea. And I feel today the idea is not about your creative I'm servicing, your digital I'm fill. It is about everyone coming together and working, which means we decided that even the way they sit in office should be very integrated. So right now what we've done is we've finally been able to manage to break the PAD entire creative team into two teams, with the creative and servicing and digital and the respective people sitting together. So it makes it very collaborative. And the biggest problem in this world is you think your problems are yours alone, and you think you have the biggest problems in the world. See, you have to understand that even when a client servicing person gets a brief from a client, no person is ever perfect, right? But a client definitely knows what he or she wants within. Sometimes they don't know how to articulate it in the best way. So it's important that both the creative and the servicing and the digital and the film, whoever's working on the project, should have the thought to question a brief, to question why it is the way it is. The more they do that, the more focused, the more on point your creative communication.
So basically what you're trying to say is the answer to my question is that the objective is not to isolate creative and then make roles within creative, but to integrate all the other skill sets that this business require, and have them all arrive at the solution together. And this, while they're not isolating the client, but the client also is part of the loop.
Absolutely.
So the client and all the other skill sets that we have internally, they all work together, integrate, and then deliver a solution.
And that's the only way you can drive ownership. How do you get someone to say, hey, that's my brand? You cannot, if you don't involve everyone.
So in the process. So it has to be collective. It has to be collective.
Now it's so easy for me to go up to a junior writer and say, hey, this is your brief, just write this, right? And there's so many people, it happens.
But unless they have someone to interact with.
Absolutely. And I feel everyone, availability of time is a very tricky thing in our business, right? So you need to be able to figure out time, make time to mentor in the right way. And it's not just about a conversation. Sometimes it's about telling people the larger picture. I always believe you should tell, even if there's someone who's working as a office boy on a brand, or someone on my production working on the brand, I would love to tell them the bigger picture, because when you know the bigger picture,
you're more connected,
you're more invested into the brand
output.
You feel that, wow, that is an entity, they're doing that, there's so much of effort, there's so much of planning, there's so much of thought, and there's a certain respect for that business that you're working on.
Absolutely.
And you want to kind of deliver on it.
Right.
So ownership is key for me. Ownership has to be collaborative. Has to be a lot of people coming together and saying, hey, that's my brand.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that we as PAD can deliver more focused and more effective communication for a brand.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, and then one voice, one brand, one voice. I believe in that. Indigo, wherever you go, there's one voice. Indigo's communication sticks because it's one voice.
Yeah.
Every brand that we work on should have one voice. You cannot be too many things to too many people. You need to be only one thing to many people.
So I was just thinking about the future of the industry,
right?
And how today, back in the day when we were being raised,
right?
There was a structure to how a campaign broke.
Right.
It would go ATL first,
yeah,
and then it would flow down with your television commercials and your outdoor,
right?
And then it would get into magazine and print, and it's just like a very predictable flow.
Absolutely.
But the future of this industry doesn't seem so predictable.
Yeah.
In the sense that I think a campaign can break anywhere.
Right.
It can break even at a Pandaba.
Right.
And
absolutely.
And it can extend all the way from that chai bandi to and then eventually at some stage probably go on some other platform.
Absolutely.
Or not go on any other platform at all and just stay there.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you see the future of this industry shaping up now that you've been actively working in this space, not just as a professional, but also as a partner at a business? What do you see is the future, and where do we need to sort of invest our time in terms of building creative businesses?
So I think the future of this business, or the future of this whole space, I think is about every person on the team, every person on the brand. How well do they understand their consumer? Right. So I'm telling you this again and again. The brief comes to the table, and then the creative guy is imagining that this person is that. The future is how close can you take your creative guy also to the consumer? Can you get him right there in that moment? And like you said, it is not a predictable flow of dissemination of the creative campaign.
Yeah.
There is not like, chalo ITL karte hai, fir ye karte hai.
Yeah.
Now it's about the idea can start from a Pandapa.
Yeah.
And then the journey can start there, and the conversation can begin there. And you can do a complete campaign only at Pandabas across the entire city or entire country if it demands for the brand, and then take it to other mediums. And that is if it is even required.
But in a way, technology has changed the game, right?
Yeah.
For example, we've gone through a phase where people believed that the art of perseverance, which was the beauty of long format copy, where we sort of pulled an audience into understanding our brand and the USP, and then journeying into the world of our experiences, right? That changed from there. It moved on to a space where it reached digital, right? And there was a lot of emphasis on data, a lot of emphasis on what is the information that we're able to pull out basis which will action our communication,
right,
or tweak our insights basis the data, right?
Right.
And now I think at some level, because technology has become such a commodity, again there's scope for the industry to move back to perseverance, the beautiful art of perseverance, right? Where there is, you're not talking about your product or service straight up. There is some charm, there is some luring the consumer into your space, right? So how do you see that emerging with technology, and how is that going to work?
So it's very simple, right? So tech that survives, tech that grows is tech that simplifies a consumer's life.
Yeah.
Why are we so stuck up with the Swiggies and the Ubers of the world? It just makes our life easy. It's so convenient, right? So any tech that makes things simpler for a consumer is probably where we should be, right? If AR VR has been happening for a while, and if it is the best way to communicate a message for your brand, then why not, right? And if it's not best, if it's the most easiest way for someone to understand something about your brand or about your product, why not? But again, the beauty, the dichotomy there is that there is tech, but there is a cost. So the future for me is tech that's cost effective. If brands can use tech that is simple on their pocket, easy on their pocket, then it becomes more viable for businesses. See, AR VR has still not been cracked. I mean, there is still a long way to go as far as the industry is concerned. And why aren't people adopting it as much? So it only goes to show that it has to be easy. It has to be simple and easy on the pocket.
It's too complex right now.
And it's just that tech for me is again a medium. a medium that's easy, a medium that's relevant. And
but that was a medium that killed the beauty of perseverance, which was a part of
agree,
the
agree,
way
but people have changed, right?
Yeah.
People have changed.
People's attention
People-
spans are.
Yeah, you just scroll over on an Instagram thing, and if you're interested for that, a second you're on it. Otherwise, you're not.
Yeah.
So because of what exposure we've had to new
But that
platforms,
is the challenge of the communicator today.
yeah,
Is how can we engage given
Now the
that
challenge-
kind
exactly.
of attention span,
yeah. Now the challenge is in 2 seconds how to get someone's attention,
Yeah.
right?
and then draw them into the
Yeah.
world of your brand's experiences.
Correct, and then stay true to who you are as a
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
Sometimes they say clickbait is not the way for brands, but
Mm.
then if people are consuming so much content,
Yeah.
can you make clickbait? Can you make clickbait happen, but in a more structured way, which finally arrives at your story as a brand?
Correct.
Right. So.
Correct. Vivek, any of the memorable campaigns that you've worked on recently that you could walk us through, and why was it such a good experience?
So, a film that's really close to my heart that we worked on recently, and we recently won an award for it at the Activation Forum in Bombay. It's this film for this brand called Sneha Chicken. And the simple reason why that is a film that I like and why it resonated really well with everyone was the fact that there was an interesting challenge that people in Old City, especially Old City of Hyderabad, there is a huge, it's not like restriction, but when a person not from the community, the Muslim community comes into it's not easy for them to start something new there, right? So Sneha Chicken had a challenge.
Entering that domain.
And that was the challenge.
Yeah.
What a beautiful challenge.
Yeah.
Like imagine having to cut through a mindset of a religion, to kind of allow room for someone else to come in, right? So we took this challenge head on. We said, how do we crack this? And me and my creative head, Abdul Ahad, coincidentally a Muslim, sat and we worked on this campaign together. And we kind of, had, a team, a fantastic team to kind of shoot it. And the whole idea was of a Bawarchi in Old City who's been settled there for a long time, and it's a story about how he kind of is taking his legacy of his father's khana forward, right? And how he serves people. And at the end of the ad, you realize that he's not a Muslim. All through the ad, you see the guy, he appreciates Azan, he appreciates the whole process of Ramzan, right? And he's absolute respect with whatever happens in the tradition. But at the end of the ad, you realize that, this guy is a Bawarchi by religion, and his name is Venkatrao, right? And that was beautiful. I mean, it lands so well. And the beauty is when this film went out and we put it on social, and we had a very good response, even from Old City.
Yeah.
So people from Old City also accepted this film and they thought it was a beautiful film. So that for me was when you actually can kind of influence emotion. For me, it's the highest pedigree of communication, right? So that is a campaign that's very close to my heart.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions for you, which are going to be quite successive, back to back in nature.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, let's see where this goes. So, what is the most crucial part of making a campaign successful?
The most crucial part about making a campaign successful would be the brief.
I would say to get the client to approve it.
Yeah, so to get the client to approve it. But now I think the way we're working on campaigns is to first get the client to approve a brief.
Yeah.
So if a client approves a brief, then we're good. That's the direction that we're taking.
What is the funniest brief you've received from a client ever?
The funniest
you can
brief?
choose to you can choose whether to name or
No,
not.
I would not want to name the client, but it's not even a brief. It's feedback. Is make the logo bigger than my creative. So that for me was like the funny. It's always a thing that we all kind of laugh about.
What is the work out there in public domain today, of late, that has really moved you or impressed you?
In general.
Yeah, today. Is there something you can recall which you of late?
Like 2-3 campaigns that are happening. I'm trying to decide which one is better. I'll come to that again.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Okay. And what is the one thing you hate and one thing you love about what you do?
I hate, honestly, having to micromanage at times.
Right.
But I think that's my failure and I need to figure out how not to do it. But I absolutely love working with creative people.
Right.
Like it's a joy to work, to have a conversation, to crack an idea. I don't think I would have been anywhere else. But
so there's good parts to your day and there's tough parts.
It's always there.
Yeah.
It's always there. Tricky part is having to tell someone the same thing in 10 other ways.
Yeah.
So that they get the point. But I think the most interesting thing about this job is the fact that you spend time with people,
Yeah.
you talk, and everyone talks about their experiences in life.
Yeah.
See, communication is not just like, hey, that's a brief, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's about someone's talking about their own personal story, and that itself could have been
Could be the idea.
Could be
that,
the idea itself,
yeah.
right?
So, what do you prefer doing more now that we're all aware you like the film space a lot? You writing or directing? What would you prefer?
No, I from writing to directing. I think any good director has to write.
Right.
Has to write, because if you don't write, you will not understand the nuance of what has to be shown, what has to be portrayed. So I don't believe that you just become a director. You write, and I think all good successful directors have written for quite some time before they start directing.
Right.
But yeah, my dream is to direct a film or a show.
So it's to write and direct.
Write and direct, yeah. And I always love to write and direct.
So if not this industry, which profession do you think you would be in?
Sport.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Like, and I think I feel, although I love tennis so much, played for a long time, I really beginning to love football.
Yeah.
And I think I can't stay without playing football nowadays. So sport is definitely would have been the other place.
Yeah. I think Zoya is getting a little restless.
Yeah, just let her go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful having you here.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best with your team.
Yeah.
Hope they keep pumping out some award-winning work, which brings great results for your clients.
So much. Yeah, thank you.
And hope you continue to find the purpose in what you do.
Yeah. I'll keep discovering.
Yeah. And on my part, I'll try to make sure you meet a lot more creative people, so the ebbs and flows are sort of balanced in your day.
Right.
Ebbs and troughs are balanced in your day.
No, you have helped me quite a bit on that front. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vivek.
It's
wonderful having you. So thanks for watching another episode of Obsessive Consumer Disorder. It was very interesting. It was very warm. Vivek took us through what it takes to lead a large creative team, and how writing is at the core of everything. And he believes that ideas come through communication today amongst teams that come from multiple skill sets, and they need to integrate to ensure that great ideas sort of come forward for our clients. So it was wonderful, and I look forward to seeing you again over the next episode, where we promise to have another interesting guest. Thank you so much.